Hello and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast where we read about some Dungeons & Dragons and discuss how we might include it in our role-playing campaigns. I am incredibly excited today, folks, because I have the one and only Sarah, CEO of Girls Run These Worlds. I have been following their Twitter, their socials for the last year going, they're so cool. And now I'm on a Zoom call with them and I'm just like, oh my God, so Sarah, how are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I am so good to be here. Not the first Zoom call I've had with you, but we can't talk about that project, I think, just yet, but very soon. Maybe by the time this comes out, we should have maybe some little bits out. So I'm excited for that.
Yes.
I'm doing so good. Thank you for having me here. This is exciting.
Yeah, I'm so excited because, one of your earliest streams, your Phandelver stream, was nominated for, the whole network's, apologies, it was nominated for an award recently. I wonder if you could talk about that before we begin.
Yes. So the Gamers is an organization that mostly, I think, their big focus is kind of esports and women and femme presenting people in esports settings and collegiate esports and things like that. They do have a token appreciation for TTRPG and AP streams, game designers, things like that. And so you're right. Girls Run These Worlds was nominated for the TTRPG campaign of the year. And we had asked, is it one of the 22 streams that we had run this year during the nomination period? And they're like, no, just everything. And we were like, okay, sure. That's great. And then in addition to Girls Run These Worlds, the stream that I am the DM for, because I don't run anything on Girls Run These Worlds. I'm the CEO and I'm one of the founders, but I did Community Cleric that will be coming back in the new year, but haven't yet run any games on Girls Run These Worlds. But I do run a game on Vancouver by Night called Phandelver by Night, which is the module that we're going to talk about today, which is A Lost Mine of Phandelver. It is the starter kit, past tense, the starter kit for Dungeons & Dragons for a number of years for 5th edition. And it was also one of the finalists. So it was I woke up one morning and my projects were listed. 2 of my projects were sandwiched in between Abria Iyengar and Dimension 20. And it was one of the most surreal moments of my life. And I have birthed a human and been married for 20 years. So that's, I think, saying something. Yeah, it was a pretty special day.
It's in the top 3. You've put it there. Yeah, sure.
It's up there. Yeah. That was pretty rewarding to see. I wasn't surprised at all to see Girls Run These Worlds up there. The work that we're doing there is tremendous. The voices that are being uplifted, the projects, the stories that are being told is all amazing. Yes. It was a bit of a surprise to see that what I consider to be my little stream made it through to the finals. But the cast is, they go full costume. So I have an orange tiefling, a purple tiefling, and a half orc. Amazing. And they go full costume, full body paint. They film TikToks for a couple of hours afterwards. So their TikToks are really fun to go watch also. If they're going to get body paint, they might as well.
Yeah.
But it was, I considered it our little thing, and it made it to the finals with it was Dimension 20 and Abria Iyengar and High Rollers, who, is just, they put out such tremendous work. So it was really, it was really exciting to see.
So let's talk about Lost Mines of Phandelver. Most people, I think, who will listen to this will have come across Lost Mines of Phandelver in some form.
I hope so, especially if you were one of those people who watched Stranger Things or watched Critical Role, and you had played maybe in high school or you had never played, and you were like, this actually seems kind of fun. Me and my friends have been looking for something to do. It's lockdown. It's, April of 2020 and we're in lockdown. What am I supposed to do all day? I guess maybe I could go online, and I've always wanted to try this. This seems like fun. And, if you went to your friendly local game store or you went online, it has always been free on the official D&D website at the friendly local game stores. I think you get the kit for $20, or at least it was $20 Canadian. Yeah. And it came with a set of dice, a core rule book, it was a soft bound core rule book, and then the module itself and some pre-generated characters and some blank character sheets. So you had everything you needed in a little box. Because it's the starter kit set, I think sometimes we take for granted that Dungeons and Dragons and that most role-playing games are very open sandbox worlds. Like you can do, if you want to play something ridiculous and hilarious, and like Dimension 20 does a totally different style of storytelling than Critical Role. And Roll for Luck, which is on Girls Run These Worlds, is very kind of like open sandbox and very just whatever the characters want to do. And the DM does have multiple ongoing plots, but whether or not the players like to punish her by following through on those plots, you know, is something different. Every table can be different based on what you want. And I really have appreciated that 5e allows, with a single rule set, a whole bunch of different things. Agreed. But the starter kit allows people who are new into role-playing games or Dungeons and Dragons in specific to get a little bit of everything. So there is good combat. There is great combat, but there's also puzzles. There's social diplomacy tasks. You get to do a little bit of like, hey, we're going to come across this abandoned manor. Maybe we could build it and have it as a keep. And what does that mean? But if we're going to have it as a keep, we have to become ingratiated to the city and the town. And we're going to have to get to know all the NPCs, and we're going to have to get it rebuilt. Like, you get to practice all of these different things. And I think the beauty of a starter kit is that it allows you to then decide, these are the things I really love in a game. And these are the things that I'm not super crazy about. So that when you go looking for something else, or when you take, you know, those level 5 characters and homebrew out a campaign for another 2 years, then you've got an idea of the things that you like to do. And I think specifically for me, you know, I do run it as a stream, as you mentioned, on Phandelver by night, but I started because I played in high school. It had been 15-ish years since I played. I didn't have a good time playing in high school because at the time, nobody, I think, was really talking about the different types of rules. And it was like 3.5, which was very min-maxy, and THACO and stuff, which the guys, keyword, that I played with loved it. They were math nerds. And they loved it, but I knew them because they were the backstage techies in our theater club. Right. And I was a little bit, I called myself bitextual. I was a little bit like backstage, but I could also be an actor depending on, you know, what was going on. And they loved the crunchiness. They loved the min-maxing. And I did not appreciate that. I wanted to come in and do the role playing. And they were like, I don't really want to be in the city. Let's burn everything down. And I was like, you can't burn. And so they never made me feel inferior. I don't have one of those stories, you know, that so many women, femme presenting people do have. But I never really loved it. And so when I came back to it, summer of 2019, my real life bestie wanted to play, and our kids were both 10. And that's a good age to start doing something. And so we picked it up, and I had never been a DM before. I had watched a few episodes of Critical Role recently to starting up. I think that was part of the conversation. But I picked it up and I worked my way through it, and that game is still going. We're 3.5 years into that game. They've just hit level 15, and they're going into like the final arc of the world. I think Lost Mines of Phandelver has a very special place in my heart because it was the start of my home game. It's what I base my stream on. But also, I think page for page, I've said this before, I don't think it's a controversial take. Page for page, I think it is the best module that D&D prints because it has something for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that because I played through it. Again, one of my first campaign was this, and it was very interesting because obviously we finished it, and it's been several years now. So when I went back to it, I obviously discovered that wasn't the ending. I think the GM just was like, I like this, I'm going to go off in my own direction. And I never knew the true ending as a result. But it was, what I love about it is that, first of all, the DM's advice it gives, like the rules to game by, very straightforward, very obvious is not the word I'm thinking of, but it's like, here's some stuff to think about. Be thinking about difficulty checks, do this, don't think about it. You don't need, like you said, it's a softback book, but you don't need, if you want to have the hard copy, absolutely fine, but just don't worry about it. And I don't think that gets talked about enough because you always talk to people who are like, I don't know if I want to DM, it sounds scary. I think if you just read that section, feel empowered to do it. And a lot of it is interesting because the plot line itself, obviously you start off, everyone knows about the sort of the goblin ambush, and then
of course
you as soon as you get to the village, suddenly then it opens up into all these little leads.
Yes.
Like you said, I don't think any other published module, like adventure module, does it as well as contained. Before circling back to sort of the final arc of that, I think.
Yeah, I think, Storm King's Thunder, which was the, I think it was like the Adventurers League game for 2-3-ish years ago. I think it does kind of have that. And D&D publishes, this box, this starter kit, of which Lost Mines of Phandelver was the starter kit for a long time. It's just been replaced this year, not even that long ago, like October of this year.
Yeah.
But they also released what's called the Essentials Kit, which it's another like $20 box. It's not a huge investment. Comes with another set of dice. This one comes with like a GM screen, so that's fun. Yeah. And you can either restart, and it has another like level 1 to 5 adventure, which again is more of kind of that you go into a town. Leylon which is near Phandalin. It's all Forgotten Realms. Mm-hmm. It's all on the Sword Coast. And, it's got a bounty board, and your players can pick and choose what they want, kind of like that Acquisitions Incorporated style of play, which so many people, again, like another great game that brought so many people into, oh yeah, I think I could do this. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Like, Wizards of the Coast has published other modules that are very similar, but I think Lost Mines is just, the characters are indelible. The Rock Seeker brothers, there is so much room to play with. They don't have to be brothers. First off, let me say, like the Gundren or the Rock Seeker sisters is a lot of fun to play with. Yeah. I think the bad guy is pretty impactful in Lost Mines of Phandelver, and that there is a mid-level boss and then a big bad. Yes. And I think that also kind of sets up that idea of this isn't just one story. If there's a mid-level boss and if there's a bad guy at level 5, that bad guy surely has a boss or knows some other well-connected people, or that person is leveling up a couple levels above you and you're going to chase them for the next 15 levels, and they're going to be the big bad of the entire campaign. I think it gives DMs a lot to work with. And like you said, I think, the other piece about it is it speaks to a new DM. Like, the manual literally says, if you're new, here's a hint. You've been describing a lot, probably, of what players see, but what about what do they smell and what do they hear? Yeah. And what are the other senses? How are you going to engage those? And I think that's really, really, really useful. Mm-hmm. And then I think, the other thing that it does well is it picks the most basic enemies and monsters that every campaign, it starts with goblins. That's classic. It's a trope for a reason. Yeah. And then one of the monsters is a beholder. And like, I know, like, it's just so much fun to get to experiment. There's a flame skull in there, like, to get to experiment owlbears and bug, like, there's so much, a banshee. There's the classic creatures, so that you all get to walk away. And then when you go watch Stranger Things, you go, oh, I understand that reference. You're all of a sudden like Captain America. Oh, I understand that reference when you're watching some other pop culture that's referencing it. Yeah. Or if you just picked up Lost Mines of Phandelver and played it, and then you showed up at Gen Con or Dragon Meet or PAX U, you would be able to have a conversation with anybody else that's there, because you've also had some of those like keystone experiences that we treasure about the heritage of this game. But it all seems fresh.
That's so interesting. So again, he says as one of these sort of, I don't want to say side quests, because I think it's all interesting that all the different sort of, when you get to Phandalin and you've got choices to do stuff. If you go say and go to the manor house, which you sort of mentioned, and you rescue the people in the basement, you find out connections to the town, but also she has a mini quest which you might go on anyway, but you might also miss that information. So it feels very video gamey in that sense, where you might pick something up but not have that relative context clue unless you play it through again. So I wonder, again, it's that sort of thing where I can see lots of replayability. If you were going to go, I want to watch one stream of Lost Mines and then go, let's see how somebody else do it. I think because it's such a nice self-contained story, which then lays the ground once you've finished it. I assume, like you have done, finished this story. You're like, right, what else can we do with the town? Because the town itself, it's not necessarily connected to, like, it's not Neverwinter or Baldur's Gate or anything like that. Right. It's like, it's just been recently, in the last 2 years, it's just come back. And I thought, well, that's so great, because then you can easily add to it. It's up and coming. It's a work in progress. You don't have to have a huge history in your head about, oh, so-and-so begot so-and-so and all that sort of thing.
Really. And I think that is, I mean, for me as a DM, the other reason why I go and find a module first is because, as mentioned, I'm a mom and I'm a wife of 20. My husband and I are about to celebrate 20 years together. And I work, 2 jobs, and I run a Twitch channel. And I just find, also being the age that I am, that I don't have all of the mental capacity to create and homebrew my own worlds.
Oh, yeah.
I like the existing lore because it gives me this like soft launch. And then depending on which characters show up to the table and what my friends are interested in, then we can go and do our own stuff and build out other stuff. So I remember like the first time we were getting ready to go to Neverwinter, I was like, oh no. Okay. And I went and did like this deep dive of Neverwinter lore. And, I had the Sword Coast Adventurers guide, but it didn't give some of the specifics I was looking for. And I was worried, like I didn't want to mess, not that any of my players were like longtime D&D lore enthusiasts. They would not have known.
No.
And our version of Neverwinter has turned out slightly different. And in my stream, Coneyberry, which is this like abandoned fort, essentially, I kind of took and homebrewed in my own thing where when you go through like the log fort doors of Coneyberry, you step through a plane, like a portal that takes you to a pocket dimension that is this place of like refuge for everybody who doesn't fit into the normal Sword Coast, like big cities. So it's full of like a 3D and satyr, and my tieflings have found a home there. It's just this really cool little place that's a pretty big city that isn't Neverwinter and it isn't Waterdeep. And my stream team loved it so much that they abandoned Trezendar Manor. They were like, I don't care about Phandalin.
Yeah.
We're staying in Coneyberry. Obviously, that's where it's happening. And so, I think now that I've played it through a few times, I am more comfortable kind of ad-libbing and improvising as we go. But there are definitely things that are the same in all of the AUs, all of the alternate Phandalins that I've run. And then there are things that I deliberately change from space to space to space to orient myself and my players. I'm really excited. There is a new book Wizards of the Coast just announced that I'm going to claim sole credit. I'm not going to be humble here.
No,
I have been
do it.
such a Lost Mines of Phandelver evangelist. And there are so many people who are, that they have expanded the world, and actually they're bringing out an entire, I don't think it's a campaign. I think it's a setting. I think it adds to the lore. Of this unsuper specified, like there is stuff about Waterdeep. There is some stuff about Neverwinter, but this expands the lore of like the other areas. This is going to be Tribor and Coneyberry and Leylon. And I cannot wait to get my hands on that book. Look, if there's anybody at Wizards of the Coast that's listening and you want to send me a preview of that book, I would be so excited.
Christmas present for next year, absolutely.
Yes, so very much. I might not even wait until next year. It'll be out, I think, in summer is when they're saying. And
that's even more exciting. I think
I'm going to get my hands on it.
Is what's coming out later.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you said, you've run it so many different times. Do you have a particular favorite part that you like to run, or is there a particular counter that you always like? I'd like to run this if possible. If you see what I mean, if there's a favorite bit to the story.
Yeah.
And don't worry about spoilers. I think by this point, if it's not the starter set, you had your chance to play. You listen.
It's not even the starter kit anymore, right? Yeah. Like as mentioned, so I have played it for my home game. I have played it on the Phandalin by Night stream. We're just at Wave Echo Cave. They're just in the final bits now. And I'm super excited for that. And then I've also run it many, many, many times as a teacher in my middle school and high school classrooms. I ran it as the D&D club facilitator and stuff. And so I've run it for kind of all ages. There's a couple of ones that I really, really, really love. I really love Cragmaw Castle, which is kind of the like combat's real. I like that one. One of the best examples of getting to, Keith Amon wrote that amazing book series, The Monsters Know What They're Doing.
Yeah.
If you haven't read them, it's really about the monsters are not just there to be beaten by your heroes. They have their own rules and agendas and like things that they're trying to do. And I think Cragmaw Castle is one of the first times where your heroes might scope out and try to listen to what's going on. And you get to imprint some of those ideas of, you hear a couple of the bugbears talking about like, sending money back to the bugbear orphanage in their home community. And, you get to see that some of the bad guys are not just mindless bad guys. They also are looking for some things. Hopefully your players will explore the whole castle and get to come across the owl bears and understand why, like they're there for a super tragic reason. Like they're there as like blood sport against like baby goblins. It's a fucking horror show in there. So they get to like decide, okay, look, these, what's going on. I think the other thing of Phandalin that just is The Lost Mines of Phandelver. One of my favorite things about the whole module is whenever I meet somebody else who's played, I say, did your players rescue Droop?
Yeah.
Because I've come to learn about 50% of teams, of parties, kill this goblin before they even get to know his name. None of my tables have ever done that. Wow. All of the tables I've ever played with have, maybe also because like I, as a DM, kind of lead them, guide them a little bit towards this little helpless creature. And so, in Phandalin by Night, we kind of code him a lot like Elmo. He's kind of like a little kid, and he's super adventurous. And my half orc has like basically she's got single mom energy. She's basically adopted him.
Yeah.
And they've taught him how to fight, and they got him armor, and they take him around. And then at kind of the end of our season 1, at the end of Cragmaw Castle, he levels up. In my homebrew rule is that Droop or sidekicks in general level up about a quarter of the speed to which a player character does. And so they hit level 4, he leveled up to level 1, and he chose based on the party and based on who he had found himself really interacting with. And based on like, you get to flavor him different every time. He took a level in cleric. And they didn't have a cleric. And so it was just like this very sweet moment of him running up and hugging the half orc. Her name is Graja. And, I got to describe like, you feel his tears wetting your neck. And then they get very, very warm. And all of a sudden you just feel a little bit better. And, that getting to like explore that he cast Cure Wounds on her. And it was just like this very tender moment. And so, I love Droop. And I'm always curious, like, if you're a psychopath table that kills Droop, I just don't trust you out of the gate anymore.
That's fascinating. I wonder, again, it's that sort of thing where I wonder if you could get like telltale stats at the end and like, did you do this, and like work out this number of players did this, that sort of thing. Because I think the book itself, it buries the lead a little bit, because there's talk about Droop earlier, and they go, there might be a goblin that can help, and it's only till you get to the castle is it talked about thing, and you're like, I wish that was a little bit earlier, because I think myself as a GM, I might have missed that on the first read through, but when I was making it, I was like, oh god, that's a cool little thing to have this sidekick that can help you out later on. But I can imagine it, people missing that straight away, like you said.
The actual wording is like, any character who listens at the doors hears several gruff voices issuing demeaning commands in the goblin tongue, like lick the floor and roll like a dog. The bugbears here are bullying their goblin slave. And I mean, right away, because also as a DM, and usually for newer players, you go, hey, do you want to go into that door? Do you want to just listen? Like, that's part of the fun, I think, of of any starter kit. I think it's something that all good BMs should do when you have a new player is take the time. You're not telling them what to do. You are helping them to understand all of the choices that they have in a game and with their characters. And so, when you hear gruff voices coming through the door, and then they'll go, well, I want to listen and see, okay, well, does anybody here speak goblin? And, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, now the choices that I made way back at character creation matter. And then, okay, well, maybe somebody speaks goblin. What if we spend 10 minutes and cast tongues or comprehend languages? Yeah. Then what would that do? And then as soon as everybody walks in, the box that it describes, the barracks contain 4 roughly built wooden bunks. 3 tall furry humanoids are lounging among the mess, barking orders at a sad little goblin that demeans itself for their amusement. Your sudden appearance causes the goblin to faint.
Yeah, amazing.
And so I'm on this Lost Mines of Phandelver DMs Facebook group because I'm a millennial, so Facebook's still a thing for me. And somebody in the group asked, like, I'm distressed, I think is what they said, is like, I'm distressed. My party killed Droop. And I was trying to convince them not to. How do you get your party not to kill Droop? I don't want this to happen again. And about half of the DMs were like, who's Droop? And about half of the DMs were like, burn the whole table, kill them all, start all over. This is ridiculous. It was really interesting. So now it's one of my favorite questions when I hear somebody has played, like, what do you do? And then do you set him free? Do you use him? There was one of the groups that I read about used him as bait later on and sent him. You find him in Trezendar in the like underground basement of Trezendar Manor. And there was a group that sent him into Cragmaw Castle and essentially installed him as like a puppet dictator once they killed King Groll. Like there's endless possibility. Awesome. And I think that is one of the things that I love the most about Lost Mines of Phandelver is when you talk to somebody who's played Strahd, it's like we died at this point or we made it all the way. And it's like one of two things. We tried to seduce Strahd or we joined Strahd. Like there's no other ending to Curse of Strahd, like those are the two endings. And every time I talk to somebody who's played Lost Mines of Phandelver, it ends differently for every group. And I love that. I think that is the true signature of a very well-crafted story.
No, I love it. I'm thinking about the other encounters. So one that stuck out for me was, you mentioned it earlier, the Banshee encounter where you're sent out to go and ask a question of the Banshee.
Yes.
Which again, I love that as a social puzzle thing because
so good.
Because you don't, again, the players, they were like, you could ask that question, or another side character could be like, hey, I need you to ask this question instead, and then kind of lots of the players what to do, and she'll only answer one. And I just quite like that because, again, they could easily, like you said, there's so many ways to go about it. They could just go kill the Banshee and never know, or have that sort of thing. And I think because it, again, with the starter set, this particular one, obviously a lot of the leveling up is through XP, and it talks about it in great detail. Maybe not as relevant anymore, but it's just interesting how definitely in this module, it talks about rewarding players for non-violent and non-combative ways to solve things. And that's because obviously when you describe a Banshee, and if you know about Banshees, you're like, oh, this is bad. But to get players to do that, I always find that really rewarding as when they come up with creative things that don't go, right, what have I got on my character sheet? What can I do? I'll roll this to hit, or all that sort of thing. So I think the Banshee one for me was really interesting because it's quite short as well. But I can make it as a 2-session. No map, no nothing. Yeah.
So I have aphantasia. So I can't draw images in my brain. So maps for me become a real lifeline. Like if I'm playing with a DM who's like, we're not going to use maps, it's all theater of the mind, I'm going to step out of that campaign. That's not a good fit for me as a player. And so I always make sure that there is some kind of map or some kind of visual reference for any players that I play with as a result. But Agatha, the Banshee, I think she's so interesting. And, again, with everything, you can homebrew more. You don't have to just take what's on the page. And so I've made her, one of the other adventures is the Old Owl Well. And there's this like necromancer who's,
great, absolutely great.
Bonkers. Bonkers. I've made Agatha his ex-girlfriend in several of my adventures.
Absolutely.
And so when players come across him first, and the zombies generally always have to be somebody that they know. There has to be a zombie in there that is a zombie that they know. It's going to be one of the rock seekers, or it's going to be, if they never found Sildar at the beginning, it's going to be zombie Sildar. You know, Phandelver by night was unhinged and Phandelver got run over, basically. Everybody fled the town. The town is abandoned again. So they get to, you know, Hum and Cost and the Old Owl Well, and they realize the zombies were the NPCs that they had interacted with in Phandelver, but not until one of them was already like halfway through re-killing them. And then it upped the stakes, because where did you get these people? Where did you reanimate them? Okay, now they're connected to the orcs at Wyvern Tor, which is like, you can just, everything can be quite interplay. And I really like that. But yeah, Agatha the Banshee, man, what a fun gal to get to play her. And I don't know why, for me, her voice is always, you know, the mom from Big Bang Theory. Yeah. You know who I'm talking about? That is her voice. Always. That's always going to be her voice. Walowitz's mom from Big Bang Theory. That's always her voice for me. I have had recently, so along with Girls Run These Worlds, which is, you know, TTRPG actual plays on Twitch and YouTube, we also have started a publishing company called Girls Write These Worlds. You know, we've got a theme, we're sticking to it. And our very first zine is coming out in January 19th, 2023. And the theme is rebirth and new beginnings. And one of the selections, one of the writings that we've picked is a redesign of the Banshee ancestry. And it is so good. And I cannot wait to run my next session of Lost Mines of Phandelver, simply because I'm going to reflavor Agatha in this ancestry redesign, because, you know, like, the idea of like a shrill woman who can chill your soul seems a little bit outdated to me. And I didn't realize it until I saw this pitch for like a new ancestry design. And I was like, oh no, this is so much better. Maybe, you know, I don't want to spoil it. I want people to read it. But yeah, it might play into, if you're looking to play Lost Mines of Phandelver, audience, maybe pick up that
zine.
Banshee ancestry. Yeah.
But I love that when you can read something, you go, wait, and that changes everything that you've just come across before. Going back to your maps comment. So each of the sort of important locations has a decent sized map, and it's very well. You've got obviously a small cave at the beginning, you've got the manor, castle, and then big F off cave at the end. With a whole manner of things. So you get your dungeons element out of it straight away. And on top of that as well, like you were saying about that sort of mid-level boss and stuff, so much political intrigue, which for me, when I played it through, I was like, and again, maybe because it was so long ago, but I was like, oh, when we discovered like the letter from the Black Spider, we're like, wait, that's somebody else? Who's that person? And then having to go around and pick up the clues, and it builds this beautiful web. And I think all of it is little seeds of stuff. And even then, this idea of factions and like a big group or a gang of some sort, like taking over. You then mentions that some of the NPCs are related to or in connection with like the Zentarum. So that sort of thing. And then if you do a side quest for them, they might recruit you again for later on beyond the subset. And I was like, that's such a nice way, because when I was definitely presented with that list of factions, I was like, you know, Sword Coast Adventure, all that stuff. I was like, oh no, I don't know anything about it. Here,
it feels overwhelming. And this is just, like you said, it's just those little breadcrumbs to get you started. You don't have to haul the whole game off to that side. It's just going to get you started so that when you're feeling more comfortable, your players are feeling more comfortable, you're ready to start ad-libbing a little bit, then you're there. And that's one of my favorite NPCs in this is, you know, I love Sildar Hallwinter. I think he's super underplayed. The fact that he's a member of the Lord's Alliance, which then opens up doors in much bigger places that you can throw his name around. But also one of my other favorite NPCs is Rydoff, the druid that you come across outside of Thunder Tree.
Amazing. Just like randomly like keeping like keep out signs, which nobody's paying attention to. And that idea of, you know, okay, here is yet another NPC with
another kind of faction piece behind them that gives just more role play if your characters are interested. We happen to have a druid in our home game. My daughter, my 10-year-old at the time, was playing a druid, and meeting Rydoth for her, she was, like a level 2 druid, meeting Rydoth, this like arch druid who could like just travel around on their own, was so cool for her that her character ends up like going to, I forget the name of what's the druid, the Emerald.
Oh, I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Rydoth. It's like a nature druid, kind of like the Zentarum, essentially.
Yes.
And my daughter's character ends up going off and like joining them and gaining a couple of levels in druid on her own because, during downtime, that's what she wanted to go do. And I think there's just so many pieces. I can't name them all. We'd be here, for so long.
Hours.
Yes. I think the other thing that I really liked about Phandelver is if your party is really on it and you guys are going to sit down, you can play this whole thing as a one shot. It'll take you about 5 to 8 hours. If you guys are like, really, this is what we're doing. We're busting down doors and kicking goblin ass. And this is what we're doing. My Phandelver by Night stream is we're, I think, 78, 80 hours into it. We're not even, we've just started Wayback Cave.
Yeah.
There is so much space to expand it as long as you want. And I think that is the other thing that I really appreciate about it is that you could take pieces. If you're playing a campaign that's already established, you can go to this campaign and take an encounter and use it somewhere else. Yep. It is easy to level up. It's easy to level down. You can drop it into almost any campaign in the same way that like Tales of the Yawning Portal, all of those like old vintage dungeons.
Yeah.
You can pop those kind of anywhere. Sunless Citadel, Aster, Tomb of Horrors. Yeah. All of those things, that you can pop in anywhere. I think that's true for Phandelver also. I don't think you have to start a campaign here. And I don't think it's only for new players. No. It just happened to have been part of the starters kit.
That's something I definitely want to emphasize. Even if you've played other things and you've never played the starter kit, it's not for new players. Like, obviously as a starter kit, it has the intro to how to DM, etc. like that. You can easily, bring your own characters, like you said, level it up and still have a really nice contained like session which you can homebrew as well. And it's, I was going to ask you about that as well. Like obviously your show, like you said, is almost like 80 episodes, and yet you've only just getting into that final arc. Do you think there's a sweet spot in terms of number of sessions for this particular one that you said you could do it in 5 hours possibly, or you could, do you think there's a sweet spot for out of all the times you've run it?
I have never found a sweet spot. It's also worth noting that I have never really played a consistent 4-hour game. So Phandelver by Night is a 2-hour stream. When I play to facilitate for middle school and high school clubs, we play it during lunch. So it's like a 45-minute game that we do once a week. Yeah. And so, like a combat can take, like when we're doing Cragmaw Castle, you're only getting through one room, and you have to be, I think it also helps you to streamline as a DM. Yes. I tell my kids like, hey, we're going to be in combat. I'm setting a timer on my iPhone. You get 2 minutes to play your whole turn. So know what you're doing. Pay attention to what the others around you are doing. We're here to kill some goblins. Be engaged with us in this. And it doesn't take out the fun. And in fact, like, especially I think for that middle school age, encouraging the kids to really be active listening from like, as a former drama person, as a theater person, that is the skill that you need if you're going to succeed in acting and theater and dramas. You have to be able to listen and comprehend and play off of the people around you. Yeah. And so I think that there are so many other skills that come along with TTRPG that I'm sure you have talked about in length on this show that are so good. But I mean, I play in shorter bursts because my attention span is not a 3-hour. I would struggle at a 3-hour. I think,
I'm definitely like, we need a break every hour when I'm DMing because I need just to like declutter, get rid of the RAM, I need to undo that, empty cache, etc. Yeah.
And also, I just find for me, I ad lib a lot. Even with a module, I'm ad-libbing a lot. And I am not a person who takes notes as I DM.
No, you're busy acting. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm busy actually playing with my players. I'm not taking notes. I have so much admiration for DMs who do. It's one of the reasons it's my cheat sheet of why I love streaming the most.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I can go back and watch it. And I'll be like,
it's great.
I don't remember this at all. This was great. That has happened so many times. Yeah. And then like, oh, I do not remember the last hour of what's happened. It's okay. I can go back and watch this and like scribble down a couple of notes and be refreshed. And so Lord help me if I ever had to do longer than 2 hours and I was not streaming, so I didn't have a record of it. That's rough, man. Yeah, I hats off to DMs who can do it. It's not me.
Well, no, and I think more and more people now, because again, thanks in a way to the pandemic that we are streaming more, and more people are online using places like Zoom and stuff like that. It's so easy to get a record of stuff.
Yes.
You know, it's not. Again, some people might not prefer it, but for me it has opened up so much in terms of like what, you know, I like you said, I can rewatch the end of the session going, okay, we did roll initiative, or I did give them that item, etc. And it's just so useful. Being aware of time, I want to ask you one final question. So obviously I asked you what your favorite bit was, or most popular bit to run. Is there a bit that you've changed the most, or one bit that you never include at all in the starter set in Lost Mine of Phandelver? Whether it's because of a taste thing, people never get it, like get to that part in the story, or have you always had bits of it in everything? Because you talked before about changing the Rockseeker brothers to a different thing, which I absolutely love. I hadn't even considered that, and I'm like, oh well, that's as soon as I've run this, absolutely, they're going to be siblings,
the sisters. Yeah,
why not?
I will say that the stream never went to Thunder Tree yet. They might, but they skipped it. They did not go. They had some other things going on, to be fair. I think the thing that I changed the most is Wyvern Tor, which is supposed to be like this. It's supposed to just be like orc combat. Like it's just like a drop in, no prep combat situation. I found this really beautiful map. And so mine is like a cavern underneath kind of Wyvern Tor, and kind of gives the start of like an Underdark to see if players might be interested in like hitting up Mesobands. Nope, not going to be able to pronounce it right now. Mesobaranzan, I think. And so it's the map is like full of like bioluminescent fungi and crystals that glow on the walls and things. And yet again, it's another good time for the monsters know what they're doing. They have a purpose for being here. And they are, in my version, they are a pack of orc scouts that are trying to keep an Umber Hulk population in control. Because if the Umber Hulks get out, they do a lot of damage. And so if you go in and slaughter all the orcs, the Umber Hulks will get out and will do damage to that area of the Tribor Trail. Now, what danger have you wrought to everybody? Because you didn't stop to think through, what are you doing here? And I think that also kind of goes to, further this idea that I think Wizards of the Coast is starting to make really great steps, that orcs are not always bad guys, and getting away from some of those kind of racial connotations that existed from legacy editions. Yes. And so I really love anything where it's orcs or goblins, tieflings, anything that had like a legacy negative connotation to it. I'm always going to be especially minded to, put in. One of my favorite tables that I have in my DM binder is a table of like meaningful trinkets. So I'll just say, roll a 10. If you're looting, roll a D10. And one of them is like a letter with like a picture of the baby sister. One of them is a lock of hair from a relative. One of them is a letter to mom apologizing for running away from home. Like it's things to really make you regret killing somebody. It's the coolest table.
I love that
for mental anguish. And I'll send you the link to it.
That sounds amazing.
It's so good. It's so good. And so, I think whenever you can layer that stuff in and it makes the world richer, the players that I play with, from kids to adults, all are that much more invested in the world.
Agreed. And yeah, I definitely see that when I was reading it. Again, it is of its time in that sense of like, it's all from goblins and they have the same, but I agree. I love the idea of expanding more so you hear that other side of them. And also like this idea that there's different political things going on as well. So obviously at the beginning, there's like, they're going to try and get one over on the others later on. So you could, there's more to it there. There's more of an agenda. And so really leaning into that for me, I was like, oh, that'd be really cool as well. But well, unfortunately, Sarah, we have run out of time.
Oh man, this was so much fun.
I know.
I could talk about this module for hours because I think it's so good.
It's so funny because sometimes when I ask guest hosts to come on and they're like, do you have a topic? And then about, I'm not so sure what have you done? You were just like, I've got it. And I was like, oh yeah, well, so I was very excited to do this because I think there's something about starter sets. And what I love when a new adventure comes out, I'm like, oh, I'm going to play that. I was so glad to go through it. And then for me, I'll tell you the ending we had, which was like, we released some giant that was tied down on a thing. I was like, oh, it's in pain, we'll undo it. And then of course it gets up, goes mad, and rocks fall and everyone dies. And that was the end of our campaign.
Awesome.
And it was great. But we were like, so can we play again next week? Like, well, your character isn't alive anymore. And I was like, oh no.
Will we be finished by the time my Phandelver campaign gets there?
It.
No, I don't want to spoil it. When I come back for part 2, we'll spoil that part.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds excellent. But as we're sort of rounding off, Sarah, is there anything you'd like to plug? Where, if you're, obviously this might be the first time people are hearing about you and Girls Run These Worlds. Where can we find your stuff? Where can we find your streams? And please signal boost and promote away.
So my name is Sarah Moore. You can find me at smore AD for Twitter, for if it still exists when this airs. Who knows? At all the social medias, really. But you can also follow me at Girls Run Worlds or at Girls Run These Worlds on Twitch. Our website is girlsruntheseworlds.com. We tell a whole bunch of stories. If you have been listening and you have been thinking about maybe streaming, but you're overwhelmed and you're feeling intimidated by the process of, okay, I've got to get a producer. I've got to deal with an overlay. What about graphics? What about advertising? How do I handle financials? How do I set things up? We do all of that so that people could just show up and tell stories. That is what our commitment was we wanted more stories told from feminine and women perspectives. And so we agreed to do all of the back end work so that these stories could get told. And we accept pitches from everybody from brand new DMs to very experienced DMs. It doesn't have to be D&D. It could be Alien, for example. It could an RPG, for example. That's a wild idea. It could be whatever system you are looking for, including, maybe homebrewed your own system. Yes. Maybe you're an indie game designer. We work with game designers all the time to bring their streams to life. So if you're interested, Girls Run These Worlds is the place you should go and look. If you're interested in watching a bunch of different things, we happen to have our holiday one-shot week is coming up December 16th to the 23rd. It is 2 shows a day, every day for 8 days, 16 total shows that are a variety of settings and rule sets, and they are all going to be fun. The casts are stacked.
So good.
Oh my gosh, there is some amazing casts in that group. We have everything from like Worldwide Wrestling RPG to that one's going to be a lot of fun, to Ink, to Bluebeard's Bride, which is the ultimate like femme horror campaign. And we have a couple of D&D streams, kind of like a Christmas Carol-y stream, if I'm not totally mistaken there, Fiona.
Maybe, yes.
I think I'm one of your players in that. I could be wrong. Yeah. So you can come and catch Fiona and I doing that. But we stream them in the kind of evening UK time, and then a different show in the evening US time. So there will be something on in the evening your time from December 16th to December 23rd all week.
I can't recommend Girls Run These Worlds enough because of the variety of RPGs at such a high quality as well. If you're like, I wonder how that game works, check out one of their VODs, check out one of the streams, because you'll always get something go, that sounds like a good game. And I just like seeing the stuff coming up for the holiday stuff. I'm like, man, all these games look amazing. I guess I'm just not working or doing anything, but I'm just gonna have to watch Twitch on in the background.
It's one of the benefits to working at home is I get to just always have it on in the background. So what a benefit.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And we'll have to get you back on again because we'll have to do more starter sets or more things and just compare. I
would love to.
Yeah, we'll do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.